This is another reading of Lord Mayher, page 3096, year is 1952. Chapter title is uh, Trip to the West. Do you want to get us rolling there, Marvin, with the top of the
Okay.
page?
Sarosh sent this telegram to those in India on 24th May. Baba and ladies party, Elizabeth driving, injured in motor accident. Now at Prague Hospital, Prague, Oklahoma. Details follow. The next day, this telegram was sent. Quote, Baba and ladies progressing well, all have fractured limbs and plaster casts. We'll be here about 2 weeks. Erich and Penda were in Hamapur when they received the news. They immediately returned to Mehrabad, where another telegram from Baba awaited them, instructing them not to abandon their tour, but to continue with it as scheduled. Erich felt regretful for not accompanying Baba, as Baba had originally asked. Had he been present, he thought, perhaps he might have prevented or lessened Baba's suffering. Erich had told Baba he was too exhausted from the new life to travel to the West, but as he found out, the Andhra and Hamapur tour was even more exhausting than a trip to America. Dawn, Meherji, Gustaji, Nilu, and Adi reached Mayher Mount in California on the evening of the 25th. On receiving the news by telegram, in care of Malcolm Schloss, Don decided to fly to Oklahoma the next morning, although it was difficult to get a plane ticket at such short notice. The four Eastern Mandali left that same night and drove straight to Prague, arriving on the evening of the 28th of May. Ivy, Charmian, and Margaret also came immediately, arriving on the 25th. The following is part of Ivy's account from her personal journal. Can you do me a favor? Take over for a few minutes. I'll be right back.
Sure. Sarosh met us at the door of the hospital with Delia. They were haggard and spent. Sarosh burst into tears and exclaimed, I shall have to kill myself. I can never face India again. For the thousands of devotees there will all feel I should have taken better care of the master. I let him weep and then tried to point out that as he was not even in the stricken car, he could hardly be held responsible. We went to see the patients, and it was a terrible shock. Baba had broken his left arm just below the shoulder, and the left lower leg had both bones broken in a jagged way. His face and nose were swollen from the fall. Mara had her skull fractured. Her closed eyes looked like huge red beets, and she bore an ugly wound in her forehead. Elizabeth had both arms and some ribs broken, as she had been pinned behind the wheel. Meru had one fractured wrist, one badly sprained wrist, assorted cuts and bruises. Mani was the least hurt. Her feet and knees badly scratched and limped with a cane. She did not eat for days and was overcome with grief and tormented that God had not given her as much to bear as the others, although she had recently had a severe operation. Baba took my hand and then wrote on his board, You must understand that this was God's will, and it will result in benefit to the whole world. In the light of this, I could see that there was a reason why, although he and Mara were hurled out of the right side of the car by the impact. He fell on his left side, and that it happened in the middle of the United States. Although Mr. Deuce had routed the first car here and planned a different route on the road maps for Baba's car so as to take in the Grand Canyon. I heard people say Baba must have planted it that way, but I cannot feel the master would ever plan to hurt Mara and the others. I think he just went forth to meet his crucificial destiny for mankind's sake. Poor Baba had been put on a cot in the doctor's extra office, and he not only was in such pain, but could hardly breathe because of his head being swollen with little blood clots from the fall. Each time we entered, he would, out of delicacy for our feelings, throw a kerchief over his face and only show his eyes. Framed with his flowing hair, they looked indeed the eyes of the Christ. Rano or Sarosh or Goher would sit at the head of the cot and let their backs be used as headboards for Baba to sit up against, hour after hour. Delia and I sent cables, tried to look after Mani, helped feed the patients, but Kitty could not be pried away from the room where Elizabeth and Mara were, except to take a bath. She stayed at her post night and day, stretching out between the beds in the middle of the night for a short while on the floor. Delia and I helped with the feeding, rushing out for coffee and sandwiches. Charmian was asked by Baba to do the laundry for him and Mara. Everything was covered with blood. After a few days, Baba gave other instructions to Ivy and Charmian. With great difficulty, since one arm was completely useless, Ivy described, he spelled on the board, "Now, for you two, I have this important mission that you both go immediately to San Francisco. See each of your group people and tell them about this accident, which was purely God's and Baba's will. This had to happen by God's will, and the result by God's will be good for the world. So explain this to each one of your group." Ivy and Charmian were instructed to personally convey this to Malcolm, Agnes Barron, Mildred Kyle, and John Bass, and then to return to Myrtle Beach on 10 July, further informing those on the West Coast Baba is definitely coming in July 1953, and you're waiting for these months will bear better fruit. You want to continue, Marvin?
As always, Baba was extremely mindful of Mara, instructing Goher to take special care of her. Meherji was with Baba from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Nilu from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Rano was also with Baba at night. Footnote:
Oops, sorry.
Rano reported that Baba had swallowed so much blood as a result of his injuries that he vomited in the middle of the first night with such force that the blood hit the ceiling first and then splattered on the walls. Wow. Adi, whom Baba would call periodically, dozed on a couch outside. The others stayed in a local motel with Mani with Monty. Kitty was looking after Mara and Elizabeth, and Margaret would give daily massages to the patients. Although the hospital was small, Dr. Burleson made fine arrangements. He called in a few outside specialists from Oklahoma City to examine Mara and take a look at the x-rays. Baba would often send Nilu to Dr. Burleson with some minor complaint, and the doctor would come. Baba would speak sweetly with him and smile. The doctor was highly impressed at finding Baba so happy despite his serious injuries and was wholehearted in his attention to him. Baba's leg was put in plaster, his arm in a sling, and his facial wounds treated. Baba used to complain a lot about the plaster, but when the doctor was willing to remove it, Baba insisted it be kept on. Baba remained in the Prague clinic for 12 days before returning to Myrtle Beach. Don and Ranu flew ahead to make arrangements. Adi, Gustaji, Mani Meru, and Delia traveled in the station wagon and left early on Wednesday, 4th June, 1952, the same day Baba and the others did. Baba was driven in an ambulance from Prague to Myrtle Beach, a distance of 1,500 miles. The idea of hiring ambulance planes was discussed, but it proved impossible to arrange. Mara, who was also on a stretcher, rode with Baba in the ambulance. Goher and Meherji were with them. Elizabeth was carried in another ambulance with Kitty, Nilu, and Charlene Kimmery, a nurse from the hospital. Sarosh and Margaret followed them in another car. With his leg still in plaster and his arm in a sling, Baba covered the tiring distance virtually non-stop. On the 8th, they reached Myrtle Beach, where Baba stayed in Elizabeth's house, Yupon Dunes, about 8 miles south from the center. Adi and his group had arrived the evening of the 6th. As mentioned, Dr. Burleson was highly impressed by Baba and recorded some of his thoughts in a letter to Baba dated 3rd June 1952. From you and your party, we have seen a demonstration of most of the teachings of Christ. Many Americans preach these things, but we have never observed so close an application of them. The profound devotion to you, which is demonstrated by all your party, convinces us that you deserve all of it. Such devotion cannot be forced. It can only be obtained by love. And to have that demonstrated affection from so many wonderful people is almost unbelievable. We are not accustomed to dealing with people who appreciate our efforts as you do, and the manifestation of that appreciation leaves us very humble, with the feeling that we do not deserve it because we realize our limitations and faults. Therefore, instead of efforts being classed as work, they have seemed a pleasure. Before leaving Prague, Baba gave Dr. Burleson a silver cigarette case, which Sarosh had purchased in Oklahoma City. Sarosh also sent the Burlesons a leopard skin, and a few years later, Baba mailed the doctor a signed copy of God Speaks. Dr. Burleson's wife, Julia, would send Mani a Christmas card every year and correspond with her. Baba had won over their hearts. He would bother, quote unquote, Dr. Burleson at night, for example, sending messages with Nilu that he was in great pain. When awakened from sleep and summoned, the doctor would come, but Baba would tell him that the pain was to him. At times, after the doctor left, having just been assured by Baba that he was feeling much better, within 2 minutes, Nilu would be sent to call him, saying the pain had returned. So the doctor would come again when, of course, Baba would tell him he was better. Yeah, I had to do something. Okay. Recovering. Baba's ways are beyond our understanding, said Age. From this infinite knowledge, he worked for everyone and employed methods according to each one's needs. How fortunate was Dr. Burleson to have been chosen to treat the God man and his close circle. Recovering in Myrtle Beach, Baba was kept in an air conditioned room at Yupon Dunes. The women stayed in the house with him, the men at the center. Nilu attended Baba during the night and the others during the day. Adi gave him regular sponge baths with Meherji's help. Meherji would somehow contrive to make Baba eat. Kitty cooked for Baba. Elizabeth's cook, Bessie, with Rano's help, prepared meals for the women, and the men dined out. At Mehrabad, Kitty used to help Nadja in the kitchen, so she knew a few Parsi dishes. Once, while instructing Bessie, she told her to prepare fried prawns, which is shrimp, for lunch. But when the women sat down to eat, they could hardly chew the preparation. Kitty asked Bessie what she had made, and she replied, "Well, you told me to make fried prunes, Miss Davy." Baba enjoyed the humor of the situation immensely. Delia and Margaret stayed on in Myrtle Beach and were a great help. Baba was suffering from the after effects of the accident, but visitors would come to see him anyway, and many people left astonished at his happy, smiling countenance. Even though suffering, Baba would attend to their problems and solve their difficulties. On Friday, 13 June 1952, Baba dictated the following message for his lovers around the world. The personal disaster, for some years foretold by me, at last happened while crossing the American continent, causing me, through facial injuries, a broken leg, and broken arm, much mental and physical suffering. It was necessary that it should happen in America. God willed it so. It brings to fruition the first part of the circular, which said that until July 10th, in the complicated free life, weakness would dominate strength and bindings would dominate freedom. But from July 10, in my full free life, strength would dominate weakness and freedom would dominate bindings. And then from November 15th, in my fiery free life, both strength and weakness, freedom and bindings would be consumed in the fire of divine love. Baba had been discussing going to New York for treatment, but instead, on the 13th, Don was sent to Baltimore to see about having Baba treated at a hospital there. As Baba's leg was still in plaster, this idea too was eventually dropped. On the 16th, Don suggested driving to Duke Hospital, which was nearby in Durham, North Carolina, for a checkup, to which Baba agreed. On Tuesday, 17th June 1952, Baba dictated this circular concerning Sufism Reoriented. Meher Baba is equally connected with Islam and its Sufism, Christianity and its mysticism, the Orient and its Vedantism, broad Buddhism, practical Zoroastrianism, Jainism, and many other such isms, which all speak the same divine truth and lead to the same divine goal. Meher Baba is also detached and above all these divine paths. He has to awaken the followers of these paths to the real meaning of these isms in their true spirit by reorienting these isms, and in this capacity, he has reoriented Sufism in the charter to be universally adopted. Adi Sr. clarified a few points to Ivy in a letter dated 5 July 1952. Baba wants you not to worry about it at all, but leave it to him. Meanwhile, he wants you to note that Sufism Reoriented American Center has no direct connection with the Meher Center on the lake's Myrtle Beach. Meher Center on the Lakes, Myrtle Beach, is not a Sufi, Vedantic, Buddhist, Christian, or Zoroastrian center. It is the Baba Center based on universality. This Baba Center will have within it 4 different centers of devotion, service, renunciation, and knowledge. An account of Baba's visit to Myrtle Beach had appeared in the local newspaper on 13 June, and Baba wished it to be printed and circulated in India. Accordingly, on the 20th, Meherji wrote to Wasdeo Kane in Delhi. Baba wishes you to get this message of 13 June and the news review about his trip to Myrtle Beach, printed and published in Delhi papers like the Hindustan Times, National Standard, and also the vernacular papers. In short, Baba wishes that these be published in as many newspapers as possible. Baba and all the members are recovering gradually, and they are all well. Baba is still confined to bed owing to the fracture in the leg. Today, we are taking him to the famous Duke Hospital at Durham, about 215 miles from here, for a checkup and perhaps to change the plaster cast on the leg, which is a bit loose. We hope to be back at Myrtle Beach around the 25th. You want to take it for a couple pages, Gene?
Sure. The following day, February 20, June 1952, that was whack. The following day, Friday, 20 June 1952, Baba was driven in an ambulance to Duke University Medical Center for an examination. Baba and Mera, who was also to be examined, traveled together from Yupon Dunes to Durham in the ambulance with Gohar, Don, and Meherji. Sarosh, Nilu, Meru, and Mani followed behind them in another car. At Duke Hospital, Baba's leg cast was replaced, but the new one caused terrible itching. Baba complained to Don to tell the doctor to remove it. This was done and another cast put on. The doctor, Lennox D. Baker, said it was against hospital policy to allow anyone to spend the night with Baba in the hospital. But after Sarosh's repeated entreaties, he made an exception. The others stayed in a motel nearby called the Dutch Inn. After Mera and Baba were thoroughly examined and x-rays taken, they returned to Yupon Dunes on the 24th. More x-rays of Baba were taken at the Conway Hospital a week later, on 8 July, which showed his leg fracture had healed. Nevertheless, Ivy was instructed to make multiple doctor's appointments for Baba and Mera with specialists in New York City. Don flew to London at the beginning of July to consult a renowned orthopedic surgeon there and to visit his family. Meanwhile, on 2 July 1952, Baba paid a final visit to the center. Mrs. Houston drove him in the morning with Mera and Mani. Gohar, Meru, Sarosh, Meherji, Adi Sr., and Gustaji followed in another car. They went to the guest house where all the gifts presented to Baba by his followers were packed and taken to Yupon Dunes. Adi Sr. read out the proposed Sufi charter to Baba during this period. Baba dictated a few corrections and points to be sent to Ivy to incorporate in the charter. Charmian, who had been called by Baba, arrived in Myrtle Beach on the 8th and stayed at Yupon Dunes. Malcolm Schloss was also called to Myrtle Beach. He had an interview on 11 July, during which he showed Baba the collection of poems he had assembled, according to Baba's instructions. Baba complimented him, comparing the poems to Hafiz poetry, and asked him to publish them, which he did under the title Ways to Attain the Supreme Reality. Meher Baba's complicated free life came to an end on Thursday, 10 July 1952, the anniversary of Baba's keeping silence. Baba himself composed the following lines that day. Bruised and battered, but not beaten, Baba greets his July 10th. Freedom dominating binding, weakness overcome by strength. As age noted, it is significant that the complicated free life ended in America, as bindings overcame Baba's life there. These bindings were America's, which assaulted and wounded the Avatar, and which Meher Prabhu uprooted by enduring. It was these bindings which made Baba's free life complicated. The world will know its result when America bows at God's feet. To do that, Baba purposely suffered and bore the assault of these bindings because he had a special mission to fulfill for America. This work was done extensively there, and its rays will shine forth over America like the welcome rays from the rising sun on the horizon. On Monday, 14 July 1952, Baba with the men and women Mondali left Myrtle Beach by car for Florence, South Carolina, where they took a train to New York City. And the note says, Sarosh did not travel with them. He had been permitted to visit Detroit to inspect production at an automobile factory and to arrange with General Motors, in parentheses, Sarosh was a GM dealer, to arrange with General Motors to sponsor his son's automobile engineering training in England. Elizabeth and her nurse, Sadie Martin, accompanied them along with Ruano and Charmian. Delia and Margaret had left for New York on 26 June. Delia went on to London so she could receive Baba and the Mondali there after making due arrangements with the help of Charles Purdom and Will and Mary Backett. The pillow she had placed under Baba's head alongside the road where the accident occurred in Oklahoma was drenched with his blood. Delia gave it to the center in Myrtle Beach as a memorial of Meher Baba's love and sacrifice for America and its people. The next morning at 8:50 a.m., Ivy Deuce was waiting to greet Baba at the New York train station. Baba and the Mondali proceeded to the home of Kate Ferris at 14 Kohani Road in Scarsdale, New York, where arrangements had been made for Baba and the women to stay. Kate Ferris was an acquaintance of Jean Adriel, whom Phyllis had met. When Phyllis asked her, boldly, "Would you like to loan your house at Scarsdale to Mayor Baba for 2 weeks?" She had replied, "Of course." Mrs. Ferris and Phyllis were waiting for Baba to arrive. This was the first time Phyllis had seen Baba since the accident. She took his hand wordlessly, and Baba gestured, "Don't be despondent." Adi and Mayurji unpacked his wheelchair, and again Phyllis felt a lump in her throat. Baba waved away her grief, as he had stated to her in Myrtle Beach. God is always light-hearted, even when crucified. Baba and the women could move about freely in the garden, as all three of Mrs. Ferris' neighbors had, quote unquote, unexpectedly taken a vacation, and so they were assured of privacy. Well, H doesn't want to turn. Let's try the top one. Oh, good. Okay. Marvin, would you like to
Mm-hmm.
read some
Yeah,
more?
yeah.
Thanks.
Baba recounted the accident for Phyllis and spelled on the board, "America was after my blood for a long time." Baba repeated this with a beaming smile, as if everything had gone just as he wished. Soon after Baba arrived, Fred and Ella Winterfeld drove up to see him. The Mandali, Adi Sr., Nilu, and Gustaji, were booked at a guest house in nearby White Plains, and the Winterfelds lent them their Chevrolet to drive back and forth to Scarsdale. Meherji and Sarosh attended to some private business and family-related work in New York City. Correspondence had begun in late June between Goher in Myrtle Beach and Ivy in New York City concerning detailed instructions for doctor's appointments in New York. And here's the correspondence. 30 June 1952. Baba wishes you to know that when you make appointments with the various specialists for him and Mira, you should not consider the question of expenses at all, but you must get the most expert and the best of surgeons for Baba and Mira. You must also see that both Baba and Mira are seen as private cases, and they do not have to wait in line with other patients and undergo a long routine examination, registration, etc., which Baba does not want, as all these waiting hours tire him out. So Baba wants you to arrange in such a way that the surgeons see Baba and Mira either at their hospitals or private offices as it suits them best and give proper treatment, advice, etc. Baba will need further x-rays to be taken and perhaps replastering. Mira's x-rays I have, but I want her eyes examined and treated by a very good eye surgeon, a man who has experience with eye operations, etc. Mira cannot yet open completely her right eye as it is still inflamed and painful. Here's another one from 4 July 1952. Baba also wishes to be seen by an ear, nose, and throat specialist as his nose is still swollen and his palate hurts. Baba wants his appointment on the 21st July. Baba says if it is suitable for ear, nose, and throat specialists to examine him at home, then Baba prefers that the doctor should come home and examine Baba and Mira in the same visit, or else they will go to the doctor's office. If the appointment is at the office, then the dates for Baba is 21 July and for Mira 16 or 17 July. I hope all the points are clear. Ivy therefore made the following appointments. For Mira, 16 July, 11 a.m., Dr. McQuaig, ENT, at his office at 660 Madison Avenue. 2:30 p.m. with Dr. J. Lawrence Poole, neurologist, at the Neurological Institute. 17 July, 11 a.m., Dr. Maynard Wheeler, ophthalmologist at 30 West 59th. 1 p.m., Dr. Emerson Connor, dentist. For Baba, 21st July, 12 p.m., Dr. McQuaig. 4:30 p.m., Dr. Frederick Smith, orthopedist, at Harkness Pavilion Presbyterian Hospital. On Wednesday, 16 July 1952, Ivy and Charmian drove out to Scarsdale. Charmian was to take Mira and Goher to the doctor, and Ivy to have an hour's talk with Baba. Baba revealed to her more about the book he wished to publish, which Dr. Ghani had been working on before he died, from points Baba had dictated. A typed copy of Ghani's manuscript had been brought with them from India. Baba stated, "I don't understand what Ghani did with all the material I gave him. Now I shall take this manuscript home, and I shall have to write the whole book over again." It was eventually published as God Speaks. Baba looked critically at Ivy and said, "You look tired. You need a rest." "I am infinitely tired. Never since eternity have I been so tired and disgusted with the conditions in the world. I wish I could return to my eternal bliss. But I must go on, and you must go on. The work has to be done. But after I go to Europe, you must go somewhere and rest so that you can be strong for the winter and all that lies ahead. From November 15 on, when my fiery free life begins, the world will be upside down." Baba made a topsy-turvy gesture. "There will be chaos everywhere." He later added, "Calamity will strike from all angles, so few will escape. The world will soon cry out for God." Afterward, Baba and the women were driven to Ivy's apartment in New York City. Meanwhile, Baba wanted a boy between the ages of 16 and 18 to do night watch while he was in New York. Not a Baba lover, but someone strong enough to wheel him around, bright and intelligent. Everyone brought acquaintances. Phyllis brought 2 Harlem boys, one a Puerto Rican named Pito, and the other an Irish Catholic. Pito had played in her house, and looking at a picture of Baba one day said, "That's God, isn't it?" When they were taken to meet Baba, Baba fingered the cross on the Catholic boy's chest. "It's a beautiful medal," the boy murmured. Baba nodded. Baba sent both boys away, however, as he found them too young and frail. On 17 July, Fred Winterfeld sent a boy in the hope that he would prove suitable for night watch, but Baba sent him back the same day. Watch near Baba was a very important duty, but being unable to comprehend Baba's gestures or read his board well, the boys were unable to carry it out. Besides, to stay awake the whole night was something only the Mandali, who could dance to Baba's every whim, could do. Finally, Phyllis called her cousin Keith McGaffey, 18, of Binghamton, New York, who was a sophomore at Colgate University. He came on the 17th with Darwin Shaw after Phyllis begged him to help take care of a very sick man with a broken arm and leg. The young man was to be paid a modest fee. Keith turned out to be suitable. He could even read Baba's board. Once, at Ivy's home, Keith asked Baba to explain what God realization meant. Baba touched his forehead and dictated, "It is like a headache. Until you have had one yourself, you cannot understand what it is like." The first morning after Keith arrived, Baba asked him, "Will you obey me?" Keith said, "Yes." "Even if I ask you to do something bad?" "Yes," he answered. Keith wrote all this to his mother, a strict Anglican. The whole family became upset and drove down to Scarsdale to see who it was their son was working for. But when they met Baba, all doubts vanished. On another occasion, Baba asked Keith, What do you want to be? I'm not sure, he said. A doctor? Baba asked. Later, Keith McGaffey did become a doctor. Although Baba kept Keith with him, he was not allowed to do night watch. Interviews with Baba began on Friday, 18 July 1952, at Ivy's apartment, 33 West 67th Street, in New York City. Charmian drove Baba there daily, with Adi Sr., Gustaji, and Keith in Darwin's car. Margaret was also present. Baba's leg was still in a plaster cast, and Keith would push him in a wheelchair. Although Baba had not fully recovered, still he agreed to see people. Many came to meet him, and Ivy and John Bass would introduce them to Baba. The first day, Baba arrived at 6 a.m. It was the middle of summer, and the heat was stifling in the non-air conditioned apartment. Baba was very tired, as he had not slept. Screen went out because okay. Baba had not slept for many nights and was most uncomfortable in his leg cast. But after the first few interviews, he looked transformed and beamed as he said, "You see, so much love has revived me." Kenneth Ross, his wife Josephine, and their three daughters traveled from New Jersey and arrived at 7 a.m. They were the first to meet Baba, who was receiving visitors in a large bedroom of Ivy's apartment. Footnote. We'll get back to it. Kenneth broke down sobbing when he saw Baba's leg in a cast. The family knelt. Oh, let's check the footnote. Kenneth Ross was Meredith Starr's brother-in-law and had first met Baba in Devonshire in 1931. Josephine was the daughter of Mary Antin and had met Baba in Harmon later the same year. Kenneth broke down sobbing when he saw Baba's leg in a cast. The family knelt in front of Baba, and Baba placed his hand on their heads. Marion Florsheim was another of those who met Baba during this visit to America. Since she would always say, "I wish you would use my energy, Baba," he nicknamed her Energy. Baba asked for a bowl of fruit, which he placed beside his couch. He dispensed a grape or cherry as prasad to people who came. John Bass sat near him. People had been instructed not to ask questions, but in some cases, Baba permitted it. Baba received people until 11 a.m. and then asked all to leave and return at 1 p.m. Ivy recalled, "It was a wondrous sight to see people come from all sorts of places and all walks of life for their 2 or 3 minutes with Baba. It seemed as if some were almost dead, but they would walk out transfigured and newly alive. Some smiled, some wept heartbreakingly. It was a 3-day love feast." The first afternoon, Baba spelled on the board to Ivy, "You know, John Bass has been saying for some time here, when are we going to have tea?" Ivy offered Baba a bottle of 7 Up, and he held up his good arm over his head and quipped, "I'm 7 Up already." Footnote. Baba asked for 7 Up throughout his time at Ivy's. The soda was to be served at a certain temperature, half refrigerated and half at room temperature. Baba returned to Scarsdale at 6 p.m. Margaret arrived in Scarsdale on the 18th and rode in the car with Baba to Ivy's the next day, 19 July, where Sarosh and Meherji were waiting. Carolyn Frey saw Baba then also. Donald Eugene Stevens, 33, one of Ivy's murids and her chief helper in those days, arrived in the afternoon. When Rabia Martin had told her group in San Francisco about Baba, Don had had reservations, as he was devoted to Inayat Khan and was skeptical of another master. But after a meeting with Martin, he decided to set aside his reservations and follow her under Meher Baba's guidance. He had been unable to come to Myrtle Beach for the May 17th Darshan, and though he had sent a telegram asking if he could meet Baba in Prague, Baba had not permitted it. As Ivy brought Don into the library, though injured, Baba stood up to embrace him. Ivy beamed, "Baba, here is my boy." Baba spelled with a smile, "You say he is your boy, but I say he is my boy." Making a play on words, he said, "Don, we have been together since the dawn of time." Don thought, "My God, how corny. Here is the avatar making puns." Baba called a halt for afternoon tea and called in Enid Corf, Margaret, the Shaws, and John Bass. As tea was served, Baba narrated the story of King Janak, a perfect master and the father of Sita, who married Ram. Darwin's family came to Ivy's every day to help with all the arrangements. Each was given specific duties, such as answering the telephone, directing the visitors arriving for their appointment with Baba, etc. Latrice Shaw was sitting at Baba's feet listening to him tell the story when she thought, "I should be loving Baba, but instead I am adoring him." Baba suddenly stopped and spelled on the alphabet board, "I am adorable," which surprised Latrice and eased her mind. Towards the end of Baba's narration of the story about King Janak, Don made the circle of perfection gesture with his thumb and forefinger, almost involuntarily, he later related. Just as he did so, Baba turned, looked at him, and made the identical gesture. A few minutes later, Don again raised his hand and made the gesture, this time deliberately, to see if Baba would respond. As he started to close his fingers, Baba turned and made the same sign. As Baba was being wheeled away in a wheelchair by Sarosh, Don crouched behind Sarosh, wasn't difficult, he's so big, and raised his hand for the third time. Baba braced himself on the handrails of the wheelchair, painfully turned around, looked directly at Don, and repeated the gesture in acknowledgement. As Don later recounted, "God has never spoken in my presence, but I am sure that I have seen him act in human form. That is the only matter in which I can explain the incredible sensitivity of action and reaction which characterized Meher Baba during those brief periods on a Saturday afternoon in New York when I first saw him in action. He has the capacity to warm the cockles of one's heart as perhaps no other living being is able to do so."
Thanks, Marvin. Shall we see if Eva can read?
You sure can. Page 3109, 1952, Trip to the West. The day's events had had an impact on Audie Sr. as well. He noted in his diary, "Today has been one of the most interesting days of interviews, with men and women bursting into tears out of love. Baba looked radiant, happy, and very beautiful." On Sunday, 20 July 1952, Baba met with Don, Ivy, and Charmaine at Scarsdale from 9 until 11 a.m. Baba explained and instructed them about the reorientation of the Sufi order and its charter, and added, "On November 15 and after will be my fiery life. There will be a great mess as never before. If my body does not fall off, I will be back in the United States by July 9th, 1953. If my body does fall off, I will be back in 700 years. By December, you will receive about 500 typed pages and $1,000 toward the publication of my book, God Speaks. How to publish it is up to Ivy and Don. Before November 15, I will send the complete charter of Sufism reoriented with my signature. It must be applicable to all other sects and equally throughout the world. Don then asked a question privately, which Baba answered. At one point, Baba dictated, intellectual knowledge backed fully by feelings is intellectual conviction. Don and Ivy returned to the city and Don left for his home in California. Don Stevens' first meeting face-to-face with Baba had confirmed the wisdom of accepting Rabia Martin's example of accepting Meher Baba as her spiritual master, as described in his following letter soon after he returned home to California. Dear Baba, always when the human mind is faced with things which are beyond its capacity for the present to absorb, it escapes off into contemplation and absorption in inconsequential and trivial detail. I remember your first, or one of your first statements to me, my Don, my boy. And then my mind goes along the inane and delightful reasoning that God is your father, and therefore he must be my grandfather. That really delights me to think about, because I had never expected him to be even a remote uncle removed 3 times by marriage. Baba, while I watched in fascination as you told a story and listened in thin-bladed anticipation and delight to your handling of business and abstruse matters of philosophy, and felt my heart grow great when you knew that I had not yet asked you about the things that lay deepest within it. While all these things occupied my mind and attention, you slipped into the fastnesses and stillnesses of my soul and held the hand of the weeping child and played ball with the awkward lad who fell over himself and summed the column of figures that the mathematician added constantly and ever to different sums. Thank you, Baba. Can one possibly thank you? Your loving son, Don. The other Sufis assembled at Ivy's apartment at 2 p.m. on the 20th. Charmaine had stayed at Scarsdale for lunch and then drove Baba back to the city with the Mandali. A special message from Baba, dictated by him on July 7, had been posted on a bulletin board. Jean Shaw had been assigned the duty of requiring everyone to read it. It read, I am equally approachable to one and all, big and small, to saints who rise and to sinners who fall. Through all the various paths that give the divine call, I am approachable alike to saint whom I adore and to sinner who I am for. And equally through Sufism, Vedantism, Christianity, or Zoroastrianism and Buddhism and other isms of any kind, and also directly through no medium of isms at all. Baba later explained his message. The poster must have made it very clear to all that I can be directly or indirectly approached. That means through different isms, sects, and different formations, or personally by direct contact, or in the Indian term, sahavas, which means literally physical nearness and service. But today we are concerned with Sufism. So I will not go into details about the direct approach, but can tell those who are in personal contact through love or service that I can be realized by their direct approach. If you take Baba to be perfect and one with God, Baba is then the ocean and these different paths: Sufism, Vedanta, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Christianity are as rivers to the ocean. But now the time has arrived and a period has arrived when these rivers have more or less become dry. Those who follow these different paths do it only in form. More importance is given to ceremonies and practices, but the real purpose is lost sight of. Vedanta, which is based on unity and assertion, finds its goal in the Aham Brahmasmi, I am God state. Buddhism, which is based on good living, finds its goal in nirvana. Zoroastrianism, which is based on pure thoughts, pure words, and pure deeds, has its goal in Ahura Mazda. Christianity, which is based especially on Christian mysticism, has its goal in becoming one with the Father. And Sufism, which is based on love, ends in Fana and Baka, the annihilation and the becoming. And the different yogas, Bhakti Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Raja Yoga, have their endings in could someone help me with that? Nirvakalpa, yeah, samadhi. All these ends mean becoming one with God and living the life of God. In short, deification. But as I say, the time is such that these rivers have gone dry. And so the ocean itself has to go out and flood these rivers. So it is now time for me to reorient these different isms which end in one God. I intend to make one unique charter regarding this reoriented Sufism and send it to Ivy Deuce from India in November with my signature and entrust the American Sufism work to her. This charter will have an entirely new aspect, but not lose its originality. In the same way, I intend to reorient the different isms and entrust the work to responsible workers and worthy persons. Now, when I send the charter and constitution and the instructions, it will be applicable to the whole Sufi world and will, by God's grace, be lasting in its effect and influence. I give you all my love, including all of those who could not be present here. During Baba's visit to New York, many of the Sufis came in his close contact, including Joseph Harb and Anna Rosa Karash, 47, who had met Baba in Myrtle Beach along with her family. In addition, Baba also gave his touch to others, such as Jean Adriel, who, because she had been ill, had not been able to come to Myrtle Beach. Barbara Mann, Beryl Williams, Harold and Virginia Rudd, Laura Delavigne, and Evelyn Blackshaw, and footnote. Jean Adriel was never to meet Baba again and gradually broke off contact with him and his followers. In 1955, she met and began following the saint, Kirpal Singh. In a letter to Baba at that time, she said she felt, since Baba had withdrawn himself from all promises, he would not be giving her the God realization she wanted in this life. Baba lovers in Los Angeles reestablished contact with Jean Adriel prior to her death in 1984. Malcolm Schloss, her former husband, remained a faithful disciple of Meher Baba to his death. Dr. Audrey Kargir, who first heard of Baba through Norina in the late 1940s in New York, came with her fiance, Prince Robert von Bronkovan. One 90-year-old woman who met Baba in New York was Mildred Kyle. She first heard of Baba through her good friend, Nadine Tolstoy, who had shown Mildred's picture to Baba one day in India. Baba took it and spelled on the board, "a great soul," and then placed the picture in his pocket. Mildred, or Mother Kyle as she was known, had been waiting for Baba to come to the West Coast, but after Ivy informed her of the accident, afraid she would not live long enough to get a second chance to meet Baba, Mildred flew to New York with a friend. And next reader, please.
Referring to her age, Baba remarked to her tenderly, "I too am old, older than the earth. I am the oldest of the old. I am the ancient one." Mildred had been president of her Theosophy Lodge for almost 40 years. She fully accepted Meher Baba as the avatar.
Wow.
When Phyllis introduced a woman who had traveled with the Barnum and Bailey Circus as a sharpshooter, Phyllis said, "Baba, this is Francis, an expert marksman." "And so am I," Baba quipped. "I shoot arrows of love at the heart." A few of Margaret Krask's dancers, including Ella Massey, were also permitted to see Baba in New York. Many of these lovers, along with John Bass and Phyllis and Adele, used to meet at the Winterfeld's home on Monday nights. At 4 p.m. on the 20th, Baba met privately with one of the members of this group, Megan Billy Eaton, 39, and her companion, Philippe Dupuis. The following is Billy's description of what happened when she entered Baba's room. "At 4 o'clock, we were ushered into the anteroom full of people who were waiting to see Baba or who had just met him. We did not have to wait, but were ushered in immediately. I went first and my companion behind me. I entered the door and looked, and there was Baba. He was dressed in a long white sadra, half reclining on a couch, his leg in a cast, with many people around him. The minute I saw him, I received a shock as if I had stepped on a live wire. It seemed to flash through every nerve of in my body, from my feet to my head. There was no time to stop and ponder, as we had to move forward. As his large, dark, flashing eyes looked at me, I felt a tremendous warm wave of love flow from Baba and break over me. It was not just a feeling, it had a physical impact.
Yeah, spring's been working yesterday.
They put it on to use the.
It was not just a feeling, it had a physical impact. As soon as Baba saw us, he smiled such a heavenly smile. He looked at me with such love, greater than any love I had ever experienced. It is indescribable. All I can say is, no one ever looked at me with such love or smiled at me like that. All around me was in a haze. Only Baba was clear. He turned his head slightly to the side, as if unable to contain his joy. Why should he have been so delighted to see us? Why me? These questions go round and round in your head for a long time after you meet him, as they are still doing in mine. This love that pours out is tangible, like a wave, but unlike a wave, it pulls you like a magnet. Baba is all love, tangible love, and love beyond my poor brain to fathom. It was overwhelming, and it left me in mild shock. Time stood still, and yet it seemed hours were going by, although it could only have taken me a few seconds to reach Baba. These moments are like eternities. Moments with Baba are all too short, but so many emotions and thoughts are crowded into them. They extend into infinity. We were told that Baba does not speak, but uses an alphabet board. I was under the impression that we would be allowed to walk in and past him quickly, as one would be allowed to look at the crown jewels. So I was totally unprepared to take the hand he extended to us, and I was wearing gloves. Baba dictated on his board. I know them, but they do not know me. In parentheses, how true that was when I look back now. And then he said something else about our love for God and his love for God and what we would do. But by then, my head was swimming and I did not comprehend very much. What a turmoil I was in. In the presence of Baba's love, all inadequacies stood out like sore thumbs. In the presence of ordinary persons, one does not like to feel inadequate. But with Baba, it is different. No matter how foolish and awkward you seem to be, you love even that because you are with Baba. One must experience it to know it. Baba understands. Baba loves. That is all that matters. Baba told Billy and Philippe, remember, my love and blessings are ever present with you. Your work is my work, and what you do for those who come to you for help is done for me. Selfless service is my motto, and as you know, I teach you all by serving all humanity myself. I have nothing else but love to give and to convey. Do not ever feel disheartened about anything. You have only to try your very best and leave the rest to me. When the rest of the Monday night group assembled before Baba at 4:30 p.m., he explained about bliss. Bliss is the goal of life. That bliss is continuous, changeless, eternal, and divine. That bliss has in it power, love, knowledge, and infinite wisdom. And God is all this in one. The Indian term Ananda, which means happiness, has 7 stages. The 7th Ananda is called Paramananda, the bliss of God, which, when attained, gives one everlasting existence in God. Today I feel happy, but this happiness is personal. To see you who love me so much makes me feel very happy and touched at heart. Norina and Elizabeth have worked for me all these years, and they love me with all their hearts. It was they who made it possible for me to come over here this time. Today, their physical presence is not here, but they are in my heart, very precious, very sacred. The only thing that I want to lay stress on is that the time is very near when all will cry out for God. From November 15 begins my fiery life, which has been circularized throughout India. If God willing, I physically survive this fiery life, I shall come back definitely to America in July 1953. That is certain. If this fiery life makes me give up my body, God will make me come back on earth after about 700 years. Baba turned to Mildred Kyle and, caressing her gently under the chin, stated, Mildred, maybe you will be with me then. To which she replied, Gladly, Baba. All I want to say, Baba concluded, is that the aim of all life, since the beginningless beginning to the endless end, is to love God and be one with Him. I give you all my love, that love which, by the grace of God, will make you love Him as He ought to be loved. Because of the heat, Baba was stripped to the waist, seated on the bed in front of a fan. In front of the fan was placed a large metal tub of ice, which served as a makeshift air conditioner. A boy of age 5 came out of Baba's room riding on his father's back. Phyllis asked, Whom have you just met? God, the little boy declared. One girl asked Baba, How can I serve others? Baba replied, Those who really know they do not have to do anything. And here's a good place to start next week, page 3115.